Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Eric Cochran and this is the Cochran Doctrine. Please like and subscribe to my channel below. So this vlog will be a continuation of my last vlog regarding immigration. Previously I had discussed the many ethnicities who've immigrated here all through the 19th into the 20th centuries and how they've made America into what it is today. In this vlog, I will be discussing more recent waves of immigrants whom we've seen come here following World War II. And I want everybody to know that I do support it, so long as it is done legally and proper measures are put into place. So I'm going to start off by saying that I grew up in a household where I was taught to love traveling at a very early age and intend to spend all my life doing it, trying to see as much of the world as I can. And I'm going to start off this vlog with a quote from Mark Twain, who, as we all should know, was born and raised in the 19th century American South and lived through the Civil War. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views on men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's life. A very well said statement that I can certainly relate to, having traveled the many places that I have been. And along with a passion for traveling, there is something else I credit equally with shaping my views that I have on immigration, and that is being raised in the Catholic faith. Whether it was attending Catholic elementary school from kindergarten through third grade, along with the many parishes that I attended growing up, two of which I had Sunday school at during my junior high years, the Catholic faith has a very diversified, over 1 billion member adherents worldwide. When I was in elementary school, there were two boys in my grade who were half Cuban, one of whom was among my best of friends. Their mothers were both born in Cuba and fled after the revolution and came to the United States as refugees. Another one of my best friends was from a family who had immigrated here from the Philippines. All three of these classmates of mine I had had my first communion with in second grade. I would like to further cite several people that I have known growing up who were either peers of mine or were part of my life for several years from different backgrounds. I went to a barber shop in Marietta, Georgia, all through my elementary school years that was owned by a Laotian immigrant who had fled escaping communism. My father had for several years a bookkeeper in his home inspection business who was a Jamaican immigrant who filled in part-time as my nanny. I once again attended military school for 5 years, where we had about a 20% international student body. Among some of our most well-represented countries in all the years I was at Riverside were South Korea, Dominican Republic, and Mexico. I would also say that I knew at least one cadet from China, Kuwait, Senegal, Germany, and Egypt in the 5 years I was there, just to name a few. Having moved to Destin when I was 13 years old, where my parents had worked in property management ever since, we've had several foreign exchange students who have come work for us over the years, mostly from Eastern Europe, i.e. Russia and the former Soviet states. Apart from that, Destin, having the seasonal hospitality, tourist-based economy that it does, attracts a lot of foreign exchange students annually from all over each year. I have gotten to know many of them over the seasons. Today, when we think of immigrants in this country, I'm sure that the first of whom come to mind are people from Latin America. The Hispanic population in the U.S. has grown enormously in the last half century and is not slowing down at all. My Papa Jay, who spent nearly a decade working as a diplomat in both Colombia and Mexico City between the 1950s and 60s, my mom having been born in Colombia in 1958 where he was stationed, forewarned me about how vital knowing Spanish was going to be in my lifetime, being a fluent Spanish speaker himself. When we think of much of the Hispanic community today, we stereotypically think of people who've crossed the border illegally, barely speak English, and are doing cheap labor that nobody else wants, or at least for the pay that nobody else will do it for. It is true that at any given time there are millions of people here illegally, but given how labor laws in this country work, it is very hard to live here illegally and survive in reality. Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, and Salvadorans make up our largest Hispanic ethnicities. Mexicans, of course, make up the highest percentage in just about every community across America. 3 metropolitan areas are the exception. The greater New York area, Puerto Ricans are the most dominant. In South Florida, Miami in particular, Cubans are, of course, the most dominant. And in the Washington, D.C. metro area, Salvadorans are the most dominant. My observation of the Hispanic communities are that they are here to seek a better life and opportunities as every ethnicity who has come to this country before them has. Yes, many of them come here and start at the bottom with a language barrier to overcome, but is it any different from, if we want to compare them to the Italian and Polish immigrants who came here just over a century ago and were working as cheap laborers in sweatshops, steel mills, mines, as I've previously discussed? I have observed 3 things about first and second generation Hispanics consistently. Number 1 is that they have a very strong work ethic and are just about all employed, whatever menial labor they might be doing. We see high crime rates in America's inner cities. That is a result of unemployment. That is one of the 2 main contributing factors. The second, which leads me to number 2, is the breakdown of family. Hispanics have very strong family values and support networks. Men work and provide for their families. Father abandonment is far less prevalent. And number 3, at the center of their support system is their Catholic faith. At every Catholic parish I ever attended growing up, a good percentage of the members were Hispanic. In the last decade, we of course appointed the first pope from Latin America. It is, in all fairness today, the most devoutly Catholic region of the world. Hispanics, like all ethnic groups, work their way up and assimilate into the American way of life. There is absolutely a very business-oriented side in many of them. Starting their own businesses is an aspiration many have in labor-intense fields many of us don't want to do. Growing up around my parents' property management business, we've contracted lots of Mexicans and Central Americans to do yard work and landscaping, paint and plaster work, and women to do housekeeping. I'm sure many of us can relate to hiring such people to do those exact tasks. You're still a business owner. Many go to trade school and become plumbers, mechanics, etc. And to top it all off, who doesn't love Mexican food, okay? Lots of immigrants who come to this country start restaurants, which they will employ many to cook, bus, and wait tables. Children will become English dominant going through the school system here in the U.S. and usually seek higher education, or at the very least, trade school or work their way in to already established family businesses. Moving on from Latin America to Asia, modern Asian immigrants, unlike those from Latin America, can be very polar in education and socioeconomic status. On one end, there are those who we typically associate with being, the nerds, okay? Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, and Indians who dominate STEM, science, technology, engineering, and medicine. For many of them, higher education is not worth pursuing in their countries if you are not going to go into one of those fields. American industries are, of course, recruiting people from these well-developed Asian nations because we are lacking people in our own country for such fields. But in this vlog, I would like to concentrate on those from third world countries. Two groups in particular who, of all Asian nationalities, make up the third and fourth largest here in the United States. Together, I think that they are some of the most hardworking, carefree, gentle people on the face of the earth. And if I may add, the women from both countries, I would say, are top contenders of the most beautiful Asian women, and they are the Filipino and Vietnamese Americans, respectively. Once again, two very hard-working groups, extremely family-oriented and religious, if I may add. Once again, citing my Catholic upbringing, one of my best friends in Catholic elementary school, I had my first communion with, was Filipino. And there was at least one Filipino family at every parish I recall attending growing up. Filipinos are very sought out in the hospitality industry, worldwide. Cruising in particular has always been one of my family's favorite ways to travel, and cruise lines hire a lot of Filipinos, I can say, along with Indonesians and Thais, to do everything from housekeeping, bartending, and guest services. The reason is, study after study shows people from these countries are a combination of the most hardworking and at the same time people who have the most beautiful smiles and smile the most. Two things that are vital when working in the hospitality industry. I can also say that Filipinos, hold on, lost a little bit of my space right here. Just a sec. I can also say that with regards to Filipinos, women in particular have become vital to our healthcare and assisted living industry. They make wonderful nurses and caretakers. In the final months of his life, my paternal grandfather, who was suffering from Alzheimer's, was cared for by a Filipino caretaker. I'll also add that when my maternal grandmother suffered a debilitating stroke which left her bedridden her last 3.5 years, the facility she lived at was all run by African women. Nigerians, Congolese, Ugandans. In these countries, there is no assisted living. They are brought up with the mentality that your elders bathed you, clothed you, fed you, and changed your diapers when you were a baby. You owe it to your parents and grandparents, after all they have done for you, to care for them later in life when they can no longer care for themselves. And that means having to feed, clothe, and help them go to the bathroom if they require it. In conclusion of my discussion about Filipino Americans, it would not be complete without mentioning Natalie Coughlin. Swimming was my main sport growing up. I swam all through high school, graduating in 2009, i.e., nearly on par between the Athens and Beijing Olympics, where she won 11 of her 12 medals. For those of you who may not know, her maternal grandma is Filipino. So that, of course, makes her mom half Filipino and her sister a quarter Filipino. I know she's very proud of her Filipino heritage and credits it with bringing out her passion in cooking. Nat, if you ever see this, I follow you on Instagram. Love you. You were my biggest celebrity crush all through high school, and I still think that you're one of the most beautiful women on the face of the earth. So, moving on to the other group, the Vietnamese American community, I think the world of them too. The first of whom risked everything to come here, escaping communism after the fall of Saigon in 1975. Again, an incredibly hardworking, family-oriented people. Many Vietnamese Americans who've immigrated here are Catholic. When I was at military school, the local Catholic parish had a sizable Vietnamese community with a priest who held services in Vietnamese. I'm sure that when we think of Vietnamese Americans today, if there's one industry that they've come to dominate here in the United States, it is the nail industry. Hey, I admit I have a guilty pleasure getting pampered by these girls. I'll go get a manicure and pedicure once a month. One of the biggest turnoffs women have is a man who doesn't take care of his nails. They won't admit it, but it is the truth. Story behind how the Vietnamese got started in this industry was in 1975 when actress Tippi Heron visited a refugee camp in Northern California where many of these women were. She decided to bring her personal manicurist to teach this fairly easy trade for the refugees to learn. From there, they taught it to more and more refugees who came over and raised enough money to open their own salons. Ever since, it has been an industry that they have continued teaching to more and more. Prior to Vietnamese arriving, getting professional manicures/pedicures was an exceptionally high dollar service. But since they've taken over the industry, it has become a service most women regularly can afford. So, to summarize my views about immigration, it all comes down to this. If you come to this country legally, are willing to learn English, earn an honest living, not expect handouts, obey the laws, pay taxes, and raise your children to do all of the above, you have a right to be here as far as I am concerned. Again, immigration is what makes our country great. I'm Eric Cochran. Thanks for watching. See you next time.